Hello, I'm Steven, the calculator guy, and I finally built an impermanent loss calculator. So people have been asking me, and I've been asking myself to build this for a long time, but I was a little bit scared about the math and would it be too difficult and could I understand it? And then I looked at the math finally, and it really wasn't that bad. So the basics behind impermanent loss is that if you're pooling, which means you're taking two tokens, you're creating a liquidity pool token, usually at a 50 to 50% ratio, and you're providing it on a platform, either for additional staking rewards, or you're holding on to that token that you get for trading fees, right? So you're getting some sort of APR. But if one of the coins increases in value, it'll sell into the other coin, or token, sorry, into the other token so that they balance out. And that can create impermanent loss. Likewise, if they both go like this, they're going to sell or buy into each other until they're even again, right? And you can incur impermanent loss. So really what impermanent loss is, it is the loss you incur from pooling as opposed to just holding interest not being considered. That's really important. Interest not being considered. And I always thought that was weird because interest should be considered, because if you're determining or deciding whether or not you should pool or hold, you'll want to know what the APR is to see if it can overcome any perceived or predicted impermanent loss. So I did build that function into the calculator because I thought it was a really important one, and I thought it was one that was missing from most online platforms, and I wanted to do something that I thought could be perhaps slightly better than what was already available. I wanted to improve upon what there was. Now I know my calculator may look a little bit complex, but I promise, actually I don't promise, I hope that once I go over it, it won't seem that complicated. Another feature that I added to it was this live price finder. So let's just say you're doing some analyses and you want to just go to some of your frequent pairs. So you look at DOT, do the drop down, maybe AVAX is something you use a lot, click AVAX, boom, live price. How cool is that? First time I ever made this live price finder, and I love it. And the live price table is you can add to this drop down just by adding a new coin here. So let's just add Olympus DAO, for example. We'll type in we'll click on it. 59th, good for them. We'll snag this URL. We'll type here. We'll paste that URL there. And now, if we change this to OHM, we'll get a live price. Look at that. How cool is that? Okay, so let's get back to this. Let's look at a common-ish pair, which is like Joe AVAX, right? You can find this on Snowball with an APY of 66.23%, which is like an APR of 62%. They're not going to be that too far off. With higher APYs, there's going to be some issues with the projections because APY functions a little bit different than APR. APY exponentially increases over time, whereas APR is perfectly linear. So that's something to consider, and I haven't really built that out yet. So we're just working with APR, but for the sake of anything below 120%, APR and APY are going to give you roughly accurate estimates. Okay, so initial price of Joe, let's just say $2.06, or let's just say we started off at $2.20, and the initial price of AVAX, let's say it was $100. Also, I want to show you what happens when I change the names because I'm kind of excited about it. Let's just say we put in here. See how it changes there and down here? Isn't that cool? Okay, so AVAX. Now, one thing to consider is that you need to have a 50-50 pair in the beginning, at least for basic liquidity pool providing. So if you don't want to do that math mentally in your head, which I wouldn't want to do, that's what these down here are for. So let's say the initial price of Joe is $2.20, and the initial price of AVAX, just to make it a little more complicated, is $95. If you go down here, what it says is the recommended AVAX quantity based on Joe initial investment is 11.58. So if we put in 11.58, what that means is now we know that these two investments are equal. And so that's that's what these tools down here are for. Okay, cool. So we have a total value of 2,210 cents, starting value, APY of 66%. Let's do a date started of last month, so we're not going crazy with it. This is 1 month ago, right? 1 month ago. And let's just say that the current price of Joe, we know that is $2.06, and the current price of AVAX is $81.69. So what you'll notice is that the initial quantity of AVAX, since the initial, it's gone up, right, by, I don't know, 0.5 AVAX, which indicates that the value of AVAX has gone down so that the Joe sold into it. So you sold some of the liquidity pool effectively sold some Joe to lift up the AVAX to make sure it maintained that 50-50 peg. So there we go. And what you would imagine is that you would have lost some Joe. Is that true? Well, look at the Joe, right? You went from 500 to 479. So you sold effectively 21 Joe to buy half an AVAX. All right, so total value now is 1974. This is total value before interest, I should say. Total value before interest. There we go. So, boom. Now you can see your values of Joe, your values of AVAX. If you want, you can compare them to the initial quantity. But here's the value of held. So value if held is 1975. So you incurred a $1.79 impermanent loss. So if you just held, you would have had $1.79 more than if you just pooled with no interest. But of course there is interest. So the interest you would have earned in 1 month is $108. So you actually ended up at $107.17 profit. So the interest overcame the impermanent loss, and that's important to understand. Okay, so now, also today's date technically is automatically generated, so I should make this blue-green. But I'm going to make it like this color, just so people know that it's over here, but it's, it's auto generated by today. Okay, so future date, let's just look into the future. Let's say, I'll do a month from now. So it's even, we have a month behind, a month today, and then a month in the future. So 1/10/2022. Okay, let's say in the future we hit a really bullish stride for Joe, right? Joe goes up to $4, but AVAX just crashes down to $50. AVAX, super high market cap. Joe, lower market cap. Who knows? Really, something crazy happens with Joe, and it tanks AVAX. Just theoretically. What you'll notice is you have way less Joe now, right? So you start off with 500 Joe, now you have 269. So a lot of that Joe was sold to buy AVAX to maintain that. So Joe price went way up, AVAX went down. Joe is selling to lift the AVAX up until they're equal again. So total value before interest has gone up, right, to $2,150. However, if you just held, you would have had $2,500, which is substantially more. So your impermanent loss is negative 17.13%, which is not negligible. And your interest earned is 241%. And I guess I should make that a percentage and put it here. I'll do that later. So you did realize a loss of $127, as opposed to if you just held and did no pooling whatsoever. But could you have known that? Who knows? Did you really think that Joe was going to 2x and AVAX was going to negative 50%? Probably not. Probably your assumption was that it was going to be less insane or intense. I want to look at one more really common example, which is doing a pairing with a stable coin. Because a lot of people often think, well, if I'm doing like Phantom USDC, for example, how safe is that? Because there's some really, really high APYs for something like Phantom USDC. So let's do USDC here, which is super simple. It's $1, and let's do Phantom here. Now I will say I don't have Phantom added, so what I'm going to do is do FTM, go over here, type in Phantom, grab this, grab the link, Control C, Control V, boom. Okay, so now I can click on this, type in FTM, or I could have selected it, the $1.45. So let's say I pool today. Actually, let's say I pooled when it was at like $1.95. Though last month I think it was even in the $2 and something. So let's do that. $2.20. Let's say I started last month, and we can look at some of the APYs. Let's look at Reaper. I feel like I give a lot of love to Grim. I don't give enough love to Reaper, and I really like Reaper. So let's give them some love. Phantom. Let's do Phantom. And a stable coin. So if we sort by APY, looking for the first stable that pops up, probably going to be FUSDT, I would imagine. Okay, so nothing yet. Joe. Interesting. Sushi. Okay, so this one might be the first one. It's a 3-pair. But we can consider these as stable. So let's just say 73%, totally fine by me. Well, pretty good. We'll assume that's what it is. So 73%. Okay, so current price, right? We want these to be the current prices. So this would be 145. If this was the case, right? Today's date, 12/10, then we have an impermanent loss of, this is impossible. So this is wrong. What happened? Is it broken? Oh, I see what happened. Yeah, the initials weren't right. So if we invested an initial 500, then the amount of Phantom should be 227.27. There we go. Now the numbers are accurate and meaningful. Okay. So we incurred a negative 2.18% impermanent loss. However, we made a profit of $31 because of the interest. Now let's say that Phantom goes up in the future, maybe not to $50, but people are bullish on Phantom and really think that $5 is a possibility. So I'm going to say $5. USDC, of course, staying at $1. And again, we're incurring a larger impermanent loss here because had we just held that Phantom, it would have gone up dramatically. If we look here at the future quantity of Phantom, that we have 150 instead of the initial 227. So we've lost almost 60 Phantom to USDC. So we actually ended up at a loss, even though we earned $186 of interest. But let's see if we held that, let's say the same prices, same $5, so we sort of peak at $5, but we waited another month or two, right? So we do 2. Okay, now we're getting closer, but you see it would still take a while to get back into the profit with interest. So if you're super bullish on Phantom, maybe even with these high APRs or APYs, you just want to hold or do some sort of single side staking, right? Single side with, maybe you do single side lending on Taro.to or something like that. So all this calculator really does is it gives you some, it makes you a better informed investor. And that's what it's all about, right? Knowing what you're doing and sort of knowing the risks associated with it. And if you have sort of an idea of what you think the prices might look like in the future, or if you just want to play around with those numbers, now you can play around with those numbers. As an aside, I did say that all my future calculators would be free to the public because I'm doing well enough with my YouTube and Patreon and investments that I no longer need to charge for my calculators. So that's awesome. I get to do math and provide that stuff for the people, which is something I always kind of wanted to do. But all my previously paid calculators, if you want access to those, you can join the Patreon, or you can still like do donations or contributions, whatever you want to do. And I'll give you those paid calculators like the Strong Tax Estimator or the AnyDAO or the the Ohm Transaction Tracker. All of those are still paid calculators because it's only fair, because people already paid for those, that I maintain those as being paid, though honestly the majority of that stuff goes to charity anyways. All right, so that's it. If you want these videos or this calculator earlier than the general public, you can join the Patreon, because that's where I put the videos in the Google Drive before they get edited and chaptered and thumbnailed by my wonderful, fantastic video guy. And also the calculators, I'll post about them first on the Patreon, and then maybe on Twitter or something, and then of course it'll be linked in the video on the YouTube whenever that gets uploaded. So once more, thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your